I still remember the way my hand shook as I turned the corner onto the street I had grown up on. It had been a long 4-hour drive from campus, my little sedan packed with books and a bag of laundry, and in my head, I had already pictured the moment I'd collapse onto my childhood bed. I thought I'd smell my mother's cooking, drifting from the kitchen, hear my father's voice booming from the living room, maybe even argue with my younger brother about whose turn it was to take out the trash. That was supposed to be my spring break, but when I pulled up, I felt my stomach collapse into a pit. There was a for sale sign stabbed into the front lawn like a knife. The windows were bare, the curtains gone, no furniture in sight, and on the porch sat 3 black garbage bags. My garbage bags. I got out slowly, almost in a daze. The neighbor across the street, Mr. Hernandez, stared at me from his porch, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. My chest tightened. I bent down, opened one of the bags, and there it was. My clothes folded haphazardly. My books, a broken frame of my family. Smiling on a beach trip just 3 summers ago. It felt like I was picking through someone else's trash, except it was my entire life reduced to plastic bags. I called my Uncle Thomas. My voice cracked as I asked him where my parents were. He hesitated before saying the words that hit me harder than any punch. They moved last week. Didn't they tell you? Tell me. They hadn't told me a thing. I had been sending part of my scholarship money home every month thinking I was helping. I had been killing myself to keep a 3.9 GPA to make them proud, and all the while they had been planning this, erasing me without even the courtesy of goodbye. I dialed my father. Each ring felt like a scream in my ear, until he finally answered, his tone flat and cold. "We moved," he said. "You're an adult now, deal with it." Then he hung up. Just like that. I stood there on the porch, my phone pressed to my ear, the sun sinking low, and the shadows stretching across what used to be my front yard. I looked at the maple tree my father and I had planted when I was 8, its branches reaching toward a house that no longer belonged to me. It felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, I loaded those bags into my car like a machine. I checked into a cheap motel off the highway, spreading out my salvaged belongings on a scratchy bedspread. A few clothes, a few books, a few memories. That was all I had left of 18 years of family. That night, staring at the ceiling of that motel room, I made a decision. If they wanted to erase me, then I would return the favor. I would cut them off, every single one of them, and I would build something so strong that they could never take it away from me again. It's strange how betrayal can change the shape of your life. Growing up, my parents had preached sacrifice and family. "We came here with nothing so you could have everything," my father used to say over dinner. And I believed him. I worked hard, harder than anyone, because I thought I was building not just my future, but our future. But while I was killing myself to be perfect, the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who sent money home, my brother Gabriel was failing classes, getting caught shoplifting, wasting his chances. And still my parents defended him, forgave him, protected him. "He's finding his way," they'd say. But me, the daughter who gave them everything, I was disposable. At the motel, I clutched the broken photo frame I had found in one of the bags. My family's smiling faces stared back at me. Faces that now felt like masks. I thought of all the sacrifices I had made, all the years I had traded joy for responsibility. And the fury in my chest finally overtook the grief. I blocked their numbers that night. My father, my mother, my brother, even the aunts and uncles who might try to defend them. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I wasn't their scapegoat. I was free. And yet freedom felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, alone, scared, but alive. That spring break, instead of relaxing, I poured myself into research. My professor, Dr. Wilkins, had already connected me to a summer internship at a law firm specializing in housing discrimination. The irony wasn't lost on me. I, the girl thrown out of her own home, would be helping others fight to keep theirs. "Channel it," Dr. Wilkins told me one evening, as we sat in her Victorian living room, her cats curled on the rug. "The best advocacy comes from personal experience." Her words lit something inside me. If my family could throw me away so easily, then maybe my purpose was to fight for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. People who knew the sting of being told they were nothing. I didn't know then just how far that fight would take me. The internship began that summer, and I threw myself into it like a lifeline. The first day I walked into the firm, I still felt the sting of rejection etched across my skin. My blazer was secondhand, my shoes worn down, and my heart heavier than any case file I would carry. But when I sat down at that desk and started reading about families evicted without warning, people scammed by landlords, tenants left without heat or water, while the wealthy collected rent checks, I felt a surge of recognition. I wasn't alone. Every case I read echoed with pieces of my story. Parents tossing out children, systems stacked against the powerless, paperwork used as a weapon. It lit a fire in me, and I worked late into the evenings volunteering for extra assignments, double-checking research, asking the attorneys to explain every detail. I refused to waste a second, but even as I built something new, the old wounds bled. At night, lying in my cramped rented room, I would still see the porch with my belongings dumped like trash. I'd hear my mother's voice telling me I was too independent for my own good. I'd see Gabriel, my brother, lounging on the couch, while my parents defended him as just going through a phase. Rage and grief circled me like twin wolves, never letting me rest. One evening in July, the firm took on a pro bono case that shattered me. A single mother named Alondra had come home from her double shift at the hospital to find her landlord had changed the locks. Her 3 children sat outside, their toys piled in garbage bags on the sidewalk. The image hit me like a fist. I couldn't breathe. When I got home that night, I dug out the broken photo frame I had rescued from my own garbage bag. My family's faces stared back, frozen in a memory of joy that no longer existed. For the first time, I allowed myself to sob until my throat was raw. But by the time the tears ended, I had made another decision. I wasn't going to run from my pain, I was going to use it. By the end of the summer, the lead attorney pulled me aside. "Violet," he said, "you have something most people in this field don't. You understand what's at stake. Don't lose that." Those words carried me into my junior year of college with a new sense of direction. I added pre-law courses to my schedule. I joined the debate team. Every essay, every project, every late night in the library was another brick in the wall I was building between who my family said I was and who I was becoming. But the past wasn't done with me. Thanksgiving break rolled around, and while most students packed to go home, I had nowhere to go. The dorms closed, so I stayed in a friend's apartment. I thought I was safe in my silence, but then came the email from my aunt. "Your mother says you're being cruel. She says you abandoned them when they needed you. Gabriel's been in trouble again. You should come home and help your family instead of pretending you're better than them." I stared at the words until they blurred. Abandoned them, I wanted to scream. They abandoned me. I didn't respond. Instead, I closed the laptop and went for a long walk through the freezing November air. The city lights shimmered on wet pavement, and I thought about how betrayal has a way of rewriting the narrative until the victim becomes the villain. My family would paint me as the selfish daughter, the ungrateful child. But I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let their story swallow mine. By Christmas, I learned through whispers from distant cousins that my parents had moved to a smaller town, renting a modest house. My brother had already dropped out of community college again. My parents were still covering for him, still framing me as the daughter who forgot her roots. It hurt, but it also freed me. Every rumor was proof that nothing I could have done would ever have been enough. Their loyalty belonged to Gabriel, no matter how much he squandered. And mine finally belonged to me. The following spring, I stood at a podium at a campus event speaking about housing insecurity among students. My palms sweated. My voice shook at first, but as I told my story, my home sold without warning, my belongings dumped in garbage bags, I felt the crowd go silent. People leaned forward, eyes wide, breaths held. And when I finished, the applause thundered. That night, walking back to my dorm, I realized something. The family that threw me away had given me the very fuel to build something greater. They had torn me down to nothing, and from that nothing, I had grown into someone unstoppable. As the months rolled by, I began to see my own life take on a momentum that no longer hinged on my family's shadow. My professors started noticing me not just as another diligent student, but as someone with a voice sharpened by lived experience. They invited me to panels, recommended me for fellowships, and encouraged me to apply for law school, even though the thought still felt impossibly distant. But for every step forward, echoes of the past trailed close behind. One night in April, as I was preparing for finals, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. My mother's voice cracked through the line. "Violet, it's me." For a moment the years fell away, and I was a child again, running to her when I scraped my knee. But then the reality of that porch full of garbage bags slammed back into me. My silence stretched. "We're struggling," she whispered. "Your brother, he's in trouble again. The police. Your father can't handle it." I felt my chest tighten, the same old pull, the responsibility, the guilt, the instinct to fix everything. But then I looked around my room. The textbooks, the case notes, the reminders of everything I had fought for since they cut me loose. "You didn't need me when you moved," I said finally. "Don't call me now." And I hung up. I sat there trembling, my heart heavy, but my resolve intact. I realized then that my family's chaos would always be a whirlpool ready to drag me under if I let them. And I wasn't going to drown anymore. That summer I interned at the state attorney's office. The cases were harsher, grittier, layered with pain I couldn't have imagined. One morning I was assigned to assist on a case of financial fraud, parents stealing their own child's identity to open credit cards. I froze when I read the file. It was like staring at the darker version of my own life, the life I had narrowly escaped. The attorney I shadowed noticed my reaction. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my voice shook. "I know what it feels like to be betrayed by the people who are supposed to protect you." He didn't press further, but something changed after that. He gave me more responsibility, trusted me with delicate research. And in the late hours of the office, I poured every ounce of myself into those files, not just as a student, but as someone who understood the devastation of being thrown away by your own blood. By the time fall arrived, I was no longer just surviving, I was building. I applied for scholarships, and to my shock, I won one that covered nearly all of my tuition. When I walked onto campus with that award letter in my bag, I felt taller, steadier, as though the cracks in me had become part of my foundation. Then came the letter. It was in my campus mailbox, handwritten, the return address smudged. I almost tossed it aside, but curiosity gnawed at me. Inside the words unraveled my composure. "Violet, we didn't mean to hurt you. Things got complicated. Gabriel needs us, and we didn't know how to balance it all. You're strong, you always were. Please don't hate us forever." No apology. No acknowledgement of the damage they'd done. Just another variation of the same refrain. "You're strong, so we chose him over you." I crumpled the letter and shoved it into the bottom of my bag. That night, though, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized something. They would never change. They would never see me as anything other than the one who could endure. If I kept waiting for their remorse, I would waste my life. So I stopped waiting. I poured myself into my senior thesis, writing about intergenerational betrayal and housing insecurity. I used my story raw and unflinching, weaving it into broader research. When I presented it at a regional conference, students and professors from other universities approached me in tears, telling me how much it resonated. Some had lived versions of my story themselves. It was in those moments I found a strange kind of healing. Not from my family, they had given me none, but from strangers who saw me, who understood me, who didn't ask me to carry more than my share. By the time graduation came, I wasn't the same girl who had stood on that porch, staring at garbage bags filled with her life. I walked across the stage with my head high, a law school acceptance letter waiting at home. Still as the applause thundered and I shook my dean's hand, I felt the faint ache of absence. No mother's cheer, no father's pride, no sibling's hug. Just empty seats where my family should have been. But then I realized their absence wasn't my failure, it was theirs. The summer after graduation felt like a rebirth. I packed my belongings, this time into boxes, not garbage bags, and moved into a small apartment in the city where I would be starting law school. The walls were bare, the furniture secondhand, but it was mine. Every inch of it was mine. I remember standing by the window that first night watching the glow of the city stretch toward the horizon and realizing that no one could take this from me. Not my parents, not Gabriel, not the people who once thought I was disposable. I had built this with my own hands, out of the ruins they left behind, but even then the ghosts followed. There were moments late at night when I would hear echoes of my father's flat voice. "You're an adult now, deal with it." Or I'd see my mother's careful handwriting in that letter twisting my pain into their excuse. Sometimes the memory of Gabriel's smug and careless still stung like fresh salt on a wound. One evening during my first semester, my phone buzzed with another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Gabriel's voice, slurred and bitter, slashed through the line. "You think you're better than us, huh, law school girl? Mom says you're heartless. Dad says you'll regret this." I listened for a moment, then quietly hung up. I didn't block the number. I didn't need to. Their words no longer held the power they once did. Instead, I turned back to my desk where my textbooks lay open, where my future waited for me to claim it. By my second year, I was clerking for a nonprofit that defended tenants against illegal evictions. Each client I met reminded me of the girl I had once been. The girl standing on a porch staring at her life stuffed into garbage bags. Some of them cried in my office, terrified of losing everything. Some sat in silence, numb with shock. Each time I told them what I wished someone had told me. "You are not disposable. You are worth fighting for." And I fought. Harder than I thought possible. Every late night, every brief I drafted, every courtroom appearance was another way of rewriting my story. I wasn't the abandoned daughter anymore. I was the advocate, the voice, the one who turned her pain into power. Years later, I heard that my parents had sold their second house and moved again. Gabriel had been arrested for theft. My mother had tried to reach out, leaving voicemails that began with apologies but always ended with pleas for help. I never called back. Not because I hated them, but because I finally understood that forgiveness does not mean returning to the fire that burned you. The last time I drove past my old neighborhood, the maple tree my father and I planted was still there, taller now, branches stretching wide. But the house no longer looked familiar. Another family lived there. Curtains in the windows, toys in the yard. Laughter spilled out into the street. It wasn't mine anymore. And for the first time, that truth didn't ache. It felt like closure. Standing under that maple tree, I whispered a quiet goodbye. Not to the house, not even to my parents, but to the version of myself that once begged for their approval. That girl deserved better, and I had finally given it to her. So if you are listening to my story and you've ever been cast aside by the very people you thought would protect you, hear this: you can survive it. You can rebuild. You can turn the ashes of betrayal into the bricks of your future. Family is not defined by blood. Family is who shows up, who stays, who loves without condition. I don't know if my parents ever understood the depth of what they did. I don't know if Gabriel ever took responsibility for the years he stole from me. But I do know this: their choices no longer define me. I define me, and that is the sweetest revenge of all. So if this story touched you, if you've ever carried scars from betrayal and still found the strength to rise, please like this video, share it, so others know they are not alone. Subscribe for more stories like this and leave a comment telling me your story. Together we can remind each other that even when family fails us, we can still create our own.